Hi everyone, welcome to another Webinar Wednesday as presented by Lancaster Safety Consulting. Today we're going to be discussing making an investment in safety and the many ways that safety pays. My name is Chelsea Staggerwald. I'm a graduate of Slippery Rock University with a degree in safety management, and I'm currently serving as an occupational safety and health specialist at LSCI. With me today is Nick Spenda.
Thank you, Chelsea. Again, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be co-hosting the webinar here with Chelsea, and we're going to state the business case for safety. And for your reference, I am a LSCI sales consultant, and really what our goal is here today is to really give you material and information, ammunition, if you will, to go into those boardrooms, to go into those managerial meetings, and really state the case for a further investment in safety.
So we can all agree that the safety of our employees is the most important part of a company's business. We want to make sure that our employees go home safe every night and injury-free. But investing in safety also has countless benefits on the company financially. So Nick, what are you going to be talking about today?
Well, I mean, the key thing here is, we want to really go over, how OSHA, and proactive approach to OSHA and occupational health and safety is going to pay for the company. It's not a cost, it's more of an investment. But we also want to look at, accident cost breakdowns. A lot of companies and a lot of managers out there, and even ownership, don't really understand how much a single accident can cost until they have one, because there's a bunch of hidden expenses in there. How much to invest in safety? This is a popular question. What should our budget be? So we're going to kind of touch on this, but little sneak preview here. Every company is going to be different. The business case for safety. Why does it make sense to actually invest in safety? How does that investment really get you that return on investment? And we're going to talk about some real life success stories. And a lot of these are going to stem from our current clients and even past clients who have seen dramatic results within their health and safety program by making that investment.
So we're all here for different reasons today. Maybe you're looking for more information to help your business move forward, or maybe you're convinced that you shouldn't be investing in safety at all. So which phrase best describes the main reason you've decided to attend this webinar today? Are you involved in your company's budget planning and think that this will help in the decision making? Maybe you're a safety professional looking for more support to prove that safety is a good investment. Are you skeptical that this webinar will prove to you that safety really does pay? Or maybe you're not familiar with this topic at all and would like to learn more.
And we want you to be honest with this. You got to be honest with yourself. When you're really looking at these questions, I'm sure some of you, maybe it's just out of curiosity, and others are really looking for the information. We don't care why you're here. We're happy you've taken the time. That's really a big investment in itself. It's taking the time to actually, research health and safety, utilize the resources that are available to you, and we really hope that this will be one for you.
So for companies who have been lucky enough to not experience a workplace injury at all, they might not know how much an injury can actually cost. OSHA has developed a tool on their website which can actually help estimate the total cost of some different injuries. Nick, do you maybe want to explain this to our viewers a little more?
Yeah, when you go on OSHA's webpage and you can see the link that's written in front of you, and if you Google it, it'll come right up. But basically, OSHA's going to give you some parameters that you can plug into their online calculator, and you describe what type of injury and a few other parameters, and it's going to give you a real estimated cost of what that injury would actually cost the company. There's a lot of hidden costs, and again, we're going to get into some of those that won't be accounted for, but it gives you an opportunity to really take a real live look at some actual figures that OSHA is able to compile, using obviously empirical evidence, and really push forward with your health and safety and show, again, any board members, any managers that maybe aren't on board with safety, some real life examples of what safety can possibly or potentially cost you.
So when it comes to workplace accidents, a lot of companies think that the only costs associated are going to come from medical bills or maybe workers' compensation, but that's only on the surface. Nick, what are some other ways that workplace accidents can financially affect a company?
Well, yeah, and this is what I've been kind of alluding to, over the first few slides is there's a lot of hidden costs, and using an iceberg as an example is just such a great reference in my opinion. Everybody sees that, the medical costs or the OSHA fines that come in, but actually, there's a lot of other hidden costs, workman's comp premiums, and those are just below the surface. And, when that new workman's comp bill comes in and your insurance company is trying to raise your rates because of the mod rate, or they don't feel like you're protecting your workers enough, that really is going to hit close to home. But, if you have an accident, there are other things that are certainly going to come into play. You're looking at things like, building damage and damage to equipment. If there's an accident, and especially if there's machinery involved in said accident, that can be very costly to the building, the surrounding environment. Certainly you're going to be looking at possibly, potential investment into new tools, things like legal expenses that typically aren't associated with health and safety. But again, if there's an accident on site, especially like a construction firm, you have a crane that maybe falls into a building, or you have some other, incidents where you have innocent bystanders possibly, then you got to look at those legal expenses. There's going to be things along the lines of, investigation time, and time that's actually spent. You're paying your employees as managers and as ownership to do work, and how much of that time is going to be tied up in the consequences of an accident or an injury, on the job. So again, these are things that companies typically don't look for, but can actually be a lot more costly than those actual citations that OSHA is handing out to you.
So pictured here, we have some more information on just how expensive these hidden costs of injuries can be. This lays out what the National Safety Council estimates as the total cost of occupational injuries. Nick, do you want to go into this a little more, show how it really is just the tip of the iceberg?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I was alluding to this a little bit with the administrative cost. Think of how much you're paying, your administrators to basically push paperwork, and then think about how much paperwork goes into, an accident. I mean, look at it this way. I'm sure we've all been to the emergency room. We've all been to hospitals. We've set up our, primary care physician. And, when we walk into that office, the first thing we're greeted with is a stack of paperwork. Well, that's on just a standard medical visit on your personal time. Imagine all the paperwork that's going to add up if you're doing this because, it's a workman's comp claim or some other insurance claim. And there's going to be a ton of time and a ton of effort and resources that are put into that. And your employees might not be completely familiar with those forms, so it's going to take them extra time to fill them out correctly and obviously get that money back, or at least the money that you can recoup. But you're also looking at things like, the actual medical costs. Maybe some of this is actually coming out of your pocket. Insurance only goes so far. If you're on a high deductible plan, or your employees are, or there's some other, miscommunication with the insurance company, you might end up paying some of that money out of cost, out of pocket. And those costs can certainly add up. You're also looking for, employee uninsured cost. What happens if the employee isn't insured? Not every company is, issuing health insurance, and that can be very damaging to an employee's livelihood. But we're also looking at things like, how it impacts other organizations. So, I mean, again, there's a ton of hidden costs here. It's really hard. Every situation is unique to really drill down on exactly how much things are going to cost. But the key here is that it isn't just the OSHA fines you got to be worried about. There's a lot of costs that are associated with any type of injury on the job or otherwise.
Okay, so now that we learned what the costs are associated with the workplace accident, let's go ahead and apply this to a company in a situation they might find themselves in. We'll say that an employee is using a ladder to reach a work area and that they lose their balance and fall 7 feet to the floor. What are the costs of this injury going to look like for the company?
Well, I mean, of course, you're going to have the direct cost, and the direct cost, as the National Safety Council has put it, is about $38,000 for an injury of this sort. But you're also going to have those indirect costs. And again, this is going to go back into those medical bills, the administrative costs, the damage to the building and surrounding areas, any liability issues, legal fees, and all the other stuff we were talking about in the previous slide. And that's estimated to be about 4 times the actual direct cost. So all in all, you might be looking at somewhere in the area of $192,000 worth of direct and indirect costs. Now that's a huge number, but really when you put that in perspective, that's coming out of profit. That's not revenue that's lost. That is not money that is, appearing from nowhere. That's coming straight out of profitability. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a 10% profit margin, think about this. You have a 10% profit margin, and there's very few companies that are able to achieve that type of profit margin. But if you're lucky enough for that much, then you're looking at close to $2 million worth of revenue that needs to be pushed out the door, or product that needs to be pushed out the door in order to recoup that. Now, obviously, if you're at a 5%, profit margin, which would probably be closer to the norm, now you're looking at double that. You're looking close to $4 million worth of goods and services that you need to sell and produce and deliver in order just to recoup the cost of that one accident. So these accidents can be really costly, on so many levels.
All right, so looking at this illustration here, it looks to me like about 50% of these accidents are being paid for out of pocket. Nick, is that true?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're looking at 50% of accidents because, again, there's a ton of stuff that goes into there. You have insurance deductibilities. And again, when you're looking at out-of-pocket expenses, the employer's got to reach into its pocket and pay for those administrative costs and things of that nature. You're also looking at things like, workers' compensation picking up 20%, 21% according to this chart, and 11% coming from the federal government, 5% from the state government, and 13 from private health insurers. But really, who pays them? When you really think about it and you trace this money back to the root, it's all coming out of your pocket because who pays the government? Who's paying for those medical insurance? Who's paying for the, workman's comp insurance? That's all coming straight out of your pocket. And as we all know, one accident and all of a sudden your workman's comp carrier spikes your premium. Now, why are they doing that? They're trying to recoup the same costs that they had to deliver to take care of that injury. And the same thing with your taxes and same thing with your medical bills. So in all, you're really paying 100%. 50% is going directly and 50% you're going to be paying indirectly. But at the end of the day, $192,000 we talked about in the last slide, that's all coming out of your pocket one way or another.
Okay, so now we know that these workplaces are extremely, extremely costly. But what are some of the factors that make it such a financial burden?
Well, we've already talked about some of them, but let's go into a few more here that we have on the slide. Wages paid to injured workers, for absences. Your employee gets hurt, especially if it's like a broken bone, they can't come on the job. Well, they're absent. Well, what happens is a lot of times companies got to pay them for those absences. Do they have sick leave? Do they have vacation? Are you just, required by law or morally or obligated to, give them their wage? So, you're going to have those extra additional expenses as far as your payroll cost. You also have the wage costs related to the time lost through work stoppages. Production never stops. And if it does, that's money straight out of profitability and straight out of the owner's pocket. So as the workplace is shut down or not running as efficient as it should be, that's money being lost. Time is money, and this is going to cost a lot of time. You also have things like overtime costs. If you have an employee that gets hurt and say it's a critical employee and it's a key employee that's not easily replaced, it's not an employee that you can go out and just hire someone off the street, or it's not someone that you can obtain in a quick manner to replace them. Maybe you're having one of your current employees that's in a similar position double down and cover their work. Well, again, not everybody can double their productivity at the drop of a pen. So that means that they're now going to be spending more times at the office, more billable hours, and those overtime costs, typically billed at a time and a half or 2 times what the typical wage would be. So now all of a sudden, your payroll is really skyrocketed because now you're paying it, really excessive money to other employees because, again, one employee can't work as he should be because of the injury. You also have administrative time spent by supervisors, safety personnel, and clerical workers after an injury. Again, there's a lot of paperwork that goes with documenting any injury. Documentation is very important for the government's sake, for your workman's comp sake, and for any other pertinent parties. They're going to see all this paperwork in writing, and now you need the time to actually take care of that. And again, that's going to be time and effort that's going to be spent by your employees. Training costs for replacement worker. Again, if that worker can't return or they can't return quick enough and you do need to replace that worker, you need to have someone else come in and do that work, you know, again, even if they're the most experienced person in the world, they still need to learn your internal system and process, which means that there's going to need to be on-the-job training, not just safety training. You got to go through the HR paperwork and everything else that's associated. And before you know it, again, those costs are really stacking up. And the last thing we have here is lost productivity related to work rescheduling. If productivity is shut down, you got to reschedule the work. Well, again, if you ever try to reschedule anything, anyone out there, and I'm sure all you managers that are listening today have had these examples, and there's probably ones popping up in your head. You reschedule something and all the costs that are associated with that, not just in time, but monetary costs, rescheduling work projects, can be, really add up very quickly.
So those are a lot of factors that Nick just laid out for us, but unfortunately, those are not the only ones. Nick, do you want to explain some more to us?
Oh yeah, they keep on going. I mean, that's the thing, and here's the crazy thing. We spent a lot of time trying to capture as many of these costs as possible, but I'm sure we missed quite a few. I'm sure we could, if we really sat down and spent hours upon hours doing this, this was a list that we were able to come up with in not too much time at all. They'll keep on going because there's all kinds of miscellaneous costs, and it all depends on the structure of your organization. But cleanup and repair, Cleaning up an accident can sometimes be more costly than the accident itself, depending on, especially if there's hazardous chemicals. Imagine if you bring in a hazmat team out, or imagine if there's some specialty cleanup crew that needs to come out. Now you're paying, other companies to clean up your mess, and quite frankly, that can get quite costly. And if it's a specialized cleanup, and there's not many people, not much competition to clean that mess up, then again, those bills go through the roof. You also have costs associated with OSHA fines, and legal action. We already touched on this, and we're going to touch on this in a few slides, but OSHA isn't going away. They're growing, and they're out there. So when they see accidents, and especially with the new reporting requirements, and if you're not familiar with those, please go back and visit one of our prior webinars on the new reporting requirements. You need to call OSHA in and actually have them do an investigation. And again, those investigations, commonly fines are issued. Third-party liability and legal costs. As I said earlier, if there's a bystander coming that was walking by and something happened, or there was somebody else that was indirectly involved, and now, today's sue happy country, they're set back in their pocketbook and they want that compensation from you. So not only are you paying them, but you're paying your lawyers to obviously mitigate that cost. Workers' pain and suffering. That's a lawyer's dream right there. And they love to plead pain and suffering, because pain and suffering, there's no real parameters on how much a pain is worth. How much is the pain for a broken leg, or an injury or an illness really worth? And that's a very subjective measure. And pick up a newspaper and you take one look and you can see that a lot of companies are paying extremely high payouts because of this. Lost goodwill and bad publicity. Just recently in the news, we had BP. They had paid $21 billion to the EPA because of the spill that they had, recently in the Gulf a few years back, obviously. And, again, the cost just keeps stacking up and stacking up.
All right, so CalOSHA's website acts as a great source of information, and it's laid out the estimated direct costs of some of these frequent injuries. Surprisingly enough, they found that a back injury can add up to more than $50,000, $62,000 for a slip and fall injury, and $40,000 for a carpal tunnel or repetitive motion injury. Now, if you think that's a lot of money for one injury, take into consideration these totals don't include the indirect costs.
Yeah, I mean, we already covered those indirect costs. So, multiply all this stuff times 5, and that's what you're really looking at. So, again, we can't harp on it enough. It's not just the face value. You got to look deeper. And when you're getting pushback and you're in that budgetary meeting, or you're in that boardroom and people are saying we can't afford to be safe, you got to really show them these numbers and say you can't afford not to be safe. I mean, that's really what the key is here. We can go on for days and list all the indirect costs, but the simple bottom line is that accidents cost a lot more than being proactive.
All right, so now that we know about the cost of workplace accidents, it's time to discuss the business case for safety. Now, convincing management to invest in safety isn't always easy. Nick, you're in sales, so I'm sure this is something that you can relate to. What are some of the obstacles that you face when you're trying to stress the importance of safety?
Well, a lot of times it's the same old tune. It's we don't have the budget, we don't have the money, the economy's bad. We just can't afford to do this. And again, this is the case that we're typically making, to our clients and our prospective clients, and pretty much anyone that's willing to listen, is that the cost of not being safe, whether it be from the regulators, whether it be from the lawyers, whether it be from, the cost of an injury, indirect cost, that's really the key. You got to go into that saying that this is an investment, not a cost. You invest in great software. The reason why you invest in great software is to make your employees more productive. If you're investing in, other aspects of your organization, again, it's for boosting productivity. And we're going to show you some slides in a few minutes here that really show that investing in safety can boost productivity as well. So that's really what the mindset's got to be going in, is that it's not a cost, it's an investment. And the question shouldn't be, should we invest, but how much we should invest in the safety to really put together a solid program and get maximum return for our investment.
Okay, it looks like it's time for another one of our safety polls. So today we want to know, what's your company's outlook on investing in safety? Is it that the owners will not spend any money on safety? The owners avoid spending money on safety as much as possible? Maybe your management staff will evaluate the priorities in your safety investments, or is it that your company has a large budget set aside for safety and is willing to spend money as needed?
We're going to wait for results to come in here, and everybody can kind of take a look at the results for themselves. but are you avoiding spending money on safety? And I would say, in my experience on the sales line, typically it's yes across most organizations. There are quite a few that are proactive, so I don't want to put everybody in that category, but there's always reasons to avoid. There's always reasons to cut cost. And when it comes down to it, you got to look at it from an ethical standpoint. Anytime you're sacrificing long-term gain for short-term benefit, you really got to ask yourself, are you doing the right thing? And there's plenty of reasons. There's always excuses on why this budget can be cut. But think about all the money you put in the numbers. It amazes me the budgets for most companies for their accounting department compared to the amount of money they're willing to invest in their safety department. And again, that's another way to kind of approach management and approach your peers and approach ownership or approach your employees if you're in that situation. you know, it needs to be made. I mean, it's simply a cost of doing business.
Okay, so we just talked about how important it is that management spends their money in the right way towards safety. So now we're going to discuss how management commitment is completely necessary. From the CEO to the laborers, the company as a whole has to have a dedication towards maintaining the safest possible workplace. So Nick, what happens whenever companies put safety first?
Well, and this is just a few examples. We have a few examples of some CEOs who get it. And you can read the information for yourself, and you can Google and see exactly what they've done. But the key thing is when you're going into those boardroom meetings and you're talking about safety, and they're probably going to point to their competitors and say, well, these people maybe not. They're always going to find the low man on the totem pole. And there's plenty of examples in every industry of companies that are going great lengths to keep their employees safe. So it's important when you're in that meeting room and you're having those discussions and you're talking with senior management or you're talking with your managers or your employees, and when they're pointing to other companies that maybe aren't putting the investment in safety, that you have people within your industry or companies within your industry that you can point to and say, well, look at the investment that they're making. And here again, it's just a couple of examples, but it's important to make those cases because safety really is an investment. I can't say it enough. If you're simply just trying to kick the can down the road and avoid cost, again, you're headed for a big surprise, sooner or later. It's just an accident waiting to happen, quite literally. And when you can take that safety program and really go out there, and as a salesperson, I can say from experience, having a great safety program is great marketing material for that matter as well. You're going in, you're arming your salespeople to go out there and, whether it be roofing, whether it be manufacturing, more and more companies want to work with other safe companies. So a solid safety program can certainly turn into, again, increased business.
Okay, so another step towards making your safety program is going to be by going VPP. Lancaster Safety has been a part of OSHA's voluntary protection program since 2010. Now, VPP consists of four main elements. It's going to be management and employee involvement, hazard prevention and control, worksite analysis, and safety and health training, which are four very important keys to having a great safety program. Nick, how do you think this helps take the company to another level?
And this is something that we preach a lot. We love it when our companies go VPP. Not enough do, but honestly, any of the companies that are current clients listening to this right now, we want to emphasize again, we'd love to take it to VPP level. It's just such an extraordinary program. The things that you learn working within this program, from dealing with other safety managers, from dealing with OSHA directly, and just getting great feedback from health and safety. It really shows your employees and all other stakeholders you made a renewed commitment into safety. A lot of people are aware, and maybe some of you aren't, that VPP really is the pinnacle of safety. When you take your safety to that level, it's great having that flag flying in your office, and when your clients come in, when new employees come in, when any type of stakeholder comes in and they're asking, what does that VPP stand for? And you get the joy of going in and explaining exactly all the things you've done to keep your employees safe. I mean, talk about creating a warm, fuzzy feeling. So it's really important. It can be very beneficial for, again, not only the ownership, but the employees, all other stakeholders within the organization, because it really shows a renewed and a continued effort into health and safety, and it makes sure that it's always in front of you, and that's the key.
Okay, so let's put me in the shoes of management that maybe is thinking about going VPP or cares a lot about their safety program. We'll say, I care about the safety of my employees. I want them to come to work every day feeling that they have the safest possible workplace. So what are some investments that need to be made in order to do so?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you know this probably better than I, but again, obviously you're going to have things like your written programs and your training materials. I mean, there's a variety of ways you can invest in safety. There's every company has a different. There's going to have a different safety agenda because it all depends on the work that you're doing. But honestly, I'd like to turn this question right back over to you, if you don't mind, because again, you see this firsthand on a daily basis, more than I do.
One of the most important things I think is going to be developing a safety committee. We talked before about how important it is to have a company-wide commitment. So with the safety committee, you can meet, ours meets monthly, you can meet weekly, you can meet however often you'd like to. However, you have to have management involvement and then all the way down to the laborers. Now, some people might think that by, pulling some of those workers off the line or off the job site is going to cost your company. But in reality, by having these workers at the meeting, they're going to be able to tell you what's happening on the job site, maybe what they're worried about, what some of the issues are, or what needs to be improved. So I think a safety committee is the number one. Also, we can always go into job site inspections.
Well, and just to kind of cut in there with the safety committee, I mean, that's something that I always harp to is getting as many people involved with the safety committee. I mean, those are eyes and ears. If you have 200 employees, that should be 400 eyes looking for safety hazards. If you have 4 employees, that should be 8 eyes. And a safety committee is a great way to get your employees involved, moving in a great atmosphere where they can approach management. Think about when you were the new man in a company. Everybody's been there. Nobody started at the top. When you're walking into a brand new company, it's hard to approach management and really point out, hey, you know what, we could be doing things better here. And when it comes to safety, you should always be open to new ideas. And that's a great outlet for employees, especially new ones, to come in, have an open dialogue with management, and really show you maybe from an outsider's perspective how things could be improved. But you were saying about job site analysis, right?
Yeah, it actually goes right along with what you were saying about having multiple eyes out looking for these hazards. Job site inspection is a actually goes right along with what you were saying about having multiple eyes out looking for these hazards. Job site inspection is a great way to do so. Whether you're going to do it with a third-party consultant like LSCI or if you're just doing it independently. You can do job site inspections, you can do equipment checking to make sure that everything is going to be in that safe, proper working condition to ensure that there's no injuries. And then also, I think disciplinary action. There's nothing wrong with tough love. If people aren't following, the right checklist, the right procedures, nothing wrong with giving them a verbal warning or maybe some disciplinary action to make sure that they're being safe.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that in the last slide here, how, having a proper disciplinary action actually saved the company significant fines. So disciplinary action is something that, a lot of companies are afraid of, whether they're being too harsh on their employees, maybe they're afraid of losing key employees. But again, the name of the game here is you got to keep them safe. And again, we're going to have some stories to support all that. One thing we really didn't touch on enough, and Chelsea, if you don't mind, because again, you help work these programs each and every day, but maybe discuss some of the programs that maybe be common to a lot of industries.
There's a lot of different programs. A lot of them is going to be, like you talking like the actual written programs, like
Yeah,
fall
like
protection.
HAZCOM and things
Yeah,
of that
hazard
nature.
communication is going to apply to companies across the board. Whether a lot of companies think they're not working with these heavy name chemicals, but we're an office setting. We have over 300 chemicals in our SDS, whether it's hand sanitizer or a simple glue or nail polish remover that somebody has on their desk, that could still expose somebody to a hazard. So hazard communication is a big one. Bloodborne pathogens, are your employees are they going to be, have to handle blood or bodily fluid, which a lot of companies might at this point be answering no. But what if something happens and they have to perform first aid or CPR? Whether it's voluntary or not, you're still going to want to have them educated on that bloodborne pathogens.
Yeah, and I want to highlight something that Chelsea just said there, because it's something that I deal with on a regular basis with clients that are thinking about signing up for a program, and when we get to HAZCOM, oh, we have that covered. And for those of you that don't know, there's a new GHS system out there. The new sheets are SDS; they're no longer MSDS. But even more importantly, there's a lot of chemicals that are continually overlooked. Toner and printer, and as Chelsea said, hand sanitizer. And going back to what she said, we have hundreds of chemicals that are logged in an office environment. Now imagine if you're a company that actually produces chemicals, or you work with a lot of machinery, or you're out in construction, and you're doing these types of more hazardous type industries. You're going to have a lot more most likely than what we have. So it's really important to get a thorough check on those programs. And again, thoroughness is the key, because that's really going to help avoid OSHA inspections as well. OSHA comes in and they see a chemical log that's 5 stories high. They're going to know that you have things under control. I mean, it's just the proof is in the pudding. They're going to take a one look at that and say, okay, well, on to the next. So it's really important to have those complete and really filled out.
So Nick, like you were saying, this always has the possibility of leading to an OSHA inspection that could result in some hefty fines. How often do you come across companies that maybe have decided to invest in safety a little bit too late?
All the time, all the time. I mean, we'll call up companies, and quite frankly, we do some cold calling here every day. Every day we're on OSHA's webpage. We'll take a look. We'll see if few people have been inspected. I'll reach out to a handful of people each and every day and just say, hey, I saw you were inspected. Wouldn't you like to have some professionals come through and give an outside look? And a lot of people are really hesitant to that. And that's one thing, especially like, whether it be, ownership, they just don't want to, again, the expense factor. So unfortunately, there are some safety directors out there almost intimidated by safety consultants, maybe losing their job, things of that nature. So they're really hesitant to make the investment in safety, especially having outside eyes in there. And that's really the wrong approach. Our job as a consultancy, and so many other consultants out there, what their job is to do is go out and point out the things that maybe slip through the cracks. It's almost impossible. Again, we're looking at 300 chemical logs. All the different programs need to be written. I mean, to really have all this stuff complete, it's it's more than a one-man job. So, having a third party help you out with this can really help you save time, energy, and money, and really make sure nothing slips through the cracks. Again, when it comes to, what does the cost of an OSHA fine be? We're about to hit that, I believe, in the next slide or two. So again, I guess we'll wait to elaborate on that then.
Okay, so OSHA's been making some changes in the severity of their citations. It seems almost as if they've been cracking down even more and issuing some heavier penalties. The average serious citation is estimated to increase 3 to 4 times. And in the past, where if you had a repeat citation, that could only be issued if you had the same violation in the past 3 years. Now it's been extended if you've had that violation in the past 5 years. And then there's also the safety consultant discount. Whenever you do get fines and you're at that informal conference, the OSHA area directors can only offer a maximum reduction of 30%. However, if you're going to hire an outside consultant, an additional 20% can be offered.
So, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I've used that phrase a few times, but it really, it's fitting for this type of situation. OSHA stated policy, this was handed down from Dr. David Michaels, is that an additional 20% can be given to a company who utilizes a third-party consultancy. Now, why would they do that? Well, again, they want to see companies being proactive. They don't give this for lawyers. They don't give it for even internal personnel. They want to see outside bodies occasionally kind of inspecting. It's really important. If you deal with the same job each and every day, especially if you're working in like a factory setting, it's easy for things to kind of fall out of place slowly and no one ever really catches it. Having those fresh set of eyes in there is really important. I always equate it to, if I go over to my brother's house, I can pick up on anything that's wrong with his house in a split second. Just like I'm sure if he came over my house, he's probably looking at things that I wouldn't pick up on. So having that outside set of eyes is really important. And when it comes to these OSHA fines, I mean, 5 years for a repeat? That means, we're recording this obviously in 2015. If you were inspected today, the repeat citation period would last till 2020. I mean, it's almost hard to think that far ahead, but that basically means that, OSHA is out there and those repeats, are going to be, low-hanging fruit, so to speak, especially if you're a large organization with employees across state lines, with employees in different locations, and again, that's not just the same employee doing the same thing. It can be a different employee in a different location. So it's really important to be proactive.
Okay, so here we have laid out the different types of citations and the different penalties that can go along with it. So a serious citation can be issued a penalty of up to $7,000. An other than serious citation, which could be something like paperwork or your OSHA 300 logs, can also hold a penalty of up to $7,000. Now, a willful or a repeat violation can be up to $70,000. And then for failure to abate, OSHA will give an abatement date for each citation, and if you don't correct it within that time, you can be issued up to $7,000 per day.
And I think a lot of people might not understand what all these mean. And quite frankly, sometimes I get confused. I mean, you made a great analogy with the record keeping. I think it was record keeping you just said with the other than serious. Or no, they're actually not the record keeping. You said, what was it you mentioned just
The
now?
OSHA 300 logs.
OSHA
Anything
300
that's
logs.
paperwork can be considered other than serious.
Well, then what would be a serious?
Serious citation, can be things like not having the proper fall protection, not having the proper program in place, maybe not providing your employees training.
Okay, and I think a repeat kind of stands for itself because, obviously they're doing the same thing more than once and getting caught while doing so. But what would a willful be? I mean, what's that?
Now, a willful citation can be something, for example, if an employee would come to you and tell you, I don't feel comfortable entering into, we'll say, for example, this trench, because that's a lot of the citations that I've been seeing. I don't feel comfortable, going into this trench. I don't feel like I have the proper protection or something's wrong. If an employer willingly sends their employee into a hazard, that's going to be considered a willful, and it can carry up to that 70,000. Now, when we say up to, that's because OSHA takes a lot of factors into consideration whenever they're issuing these citations. They're going to be based off of the probability that an accident occurs, and then also if an accident did occur, how severe it could be. So as you're talking about before, maybe going into an unprotected trench will carry a heavier fine than not having a guardrail on a simple set of stairs.
Yeah, so I mean, basically the punishment should fit the crime. But
Exactly.
but here's the thing too that I think people should realize: some of this does get a little bit subjective. So I mean, again, the proof that you can put on the table for OSHA when you're going into those informal conferences or even disputing it further is going to be really crucial. You know, what do you have? How can you prove that you weren't willfully, and how can you prove that this wasn't a repeat or a serious citation? Documentation is going to be key, and that's really going back to some of the investments you need to make with the written programs and disciplinary action and some of the other stuff Chelsea was alluding to earlier.
And OSHA also they can always issue citations based on the general duty clause. So if OSHA feels that you're not providing a safe workplace, they can issue a citation on the spot.
So basically, that's like they just find something that doesn't really fit any other category.
Exactly. So it's better to be too safe than sorry. Okay, so let's say you're struggling to convince others to take the plunge and invest in safety. Nick, as we discussed already, you're in sales. This is a daily battle that you face. So how do you do it?
Well, I mean, there's really three arguments for this. And one is a moral argument. And we've used this in past webinars. For anybody that's familiar with our webinars, this isn't anything new. But one of the things is a moral issue. We don't want anybody to get hurt, do we? Who's going to answer yes to that? They want to see someone hurt. So I mean, that's a great way to open up maybe someone's mind or open up the conversation. We want to prevent injuries here because we care about our people. Most companies, the vast majority of companies, care about their employees. They don't want anybody to get hurt. Maybe they just don't realize that they need to do more to prevent that from happening. And again, showing examples of, this could actually hurt our employees and, really affect their lives is one great case you can make. Obviously, the legal battle. We want to apply with the law, don't we? You know, there's continual rules and regulations that are being pumped out, and again, not just from OSHA, but from the EPA and various other sources. And obviously, you got to comply with those. I mean, it's again a cost of doing business. If you want to be operating in business in the United States of America, you need to comply with these rules and regulations. So it's very important to make that case to management that hey, we might not be complying with the law. And a lot of times, that can really open some eyes. And then obviously there's the business case, which we're kind of talking about today. It costs less to be proactive than reactive. And this is what we've been really talking about for the last, you know, 40 minutes or so. It's just about avoiding those costs. Again, safety is an investment. Accidents are a cost. Let's avoid those costs by investing in safety. Again, in the long run, it's going to be a lot more beneficial to us. Taking it right back to the moral standpoint, if you're gaining in the short run and you're losing in the long run, a lot of times that's not an ethical decision. So, I mean, it all really ties in together.
All right, so Nick, to be honest, I'm more familiar with the safety side of things. I went to school for safety, so I don't know too much on the business aspect. And I think that some of our viewers today might be in the same boat as I am. Could you explain to me maybe more about what is return on investment?
Yeah, I mean, ROI, return on investment. And obviously you need to have the proper language. I'm sure that some of the safety professionals that are listening in today maybe don't have quite the business acumen. Maybe you're focused on safety. And when you're going into management, a lot of times we'll use terms, safety terms such as JSAs and things of that nature when we're talking amongst ourselves. But we also got to speak the language of business. And return on investment, ROI, is a very popular term, in any management meeting or at least any budgetary meeting. And really, it is what it is. You're going to put money into an investment. That's what investment is. An investment is money that you put in or resources you put into something, hoping for a greater return coming back to you. Now, the money that's coming back to you is that return on your investment. So it's key to take a look at this, and as we go through, I believe, the next few slides here, we're going to talk about the return that you might be able to expect and that you should anticipate by putting strategic safety dollars into your organization. And that's a great way to go into those boardrooms and go into those meetings and say, listen, I have a great way to get a nice solid ROI. And that should perk up anyone's ears because they're always looking for, I mean, that's what a business is. You're investing in a business to get a return. Well, within the business, we're going to show you how you can invest in safety and again, get that return on your investment.
So it's kind of like a spend money to make money type deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's really what, investing is. You spend money to make money, and the money you make is that return on investment. So, we have some statistics here, and these were obviously third-party compiled, and this isn't stuff we're just making up here. When it comes down to it, for a dollar spent on safety, typically you're looking at anywhere between $3 and $6. It depends on the study. So, one of the studies that we have here at the very beginning here, for every dollar spent on direct costs related to an accident, there's another $3 to $5 worth of indirect costs, and we've already kind of covered that. Most executives polled by Liberty Mutual said that for every dollar they had spent on safety, they saved at least $3. Again, and that's your return. You spend $1 today, so you don't have to spend $3 tomorrow. So sometimes that return isn't exactly, okay, well, we put the money in the slot machine and it pours out a bunch of quarters, but it's a matter of, okay, I spent $1 today, so I don't have to spend $3 tomorrow. In a recent poll of financial decision makers, it was perceived that for every dollar spent, they returned a 4.41 or 441% return on their investment. So, what they were able to calculate and from their perception was they invested $1, they saved $4.41 in the future. And again, those are all those costs we were speaking about, earlier.
Okay, so now we're going to discuss some real success stories that we've seen with our clients who have decided to invest in making safety a priority. We've used stories that aren't out of the ordinary and could apply to companies across the board. And although we've been able to reduce fines for many of our clients, we always recommend being proactive rather than reactive.
Well, and this is a slide that we got, as a member of VPP. It was a keynote speaker that shared this with us, and they were really proud that back in the early '90s they had a pretty big, or not the best safety program in the world. Let's just put it that way. And they decided to really put money and resources into that safety program. So their TCIR rate, and that's something I even have trouble saying, let alone knowing what it means. And actually, before we even get into that, Chelsea, why don't you elaborate a little bit on what TCIR even means?
Okay, so TCIR stands for Total Case Incident Rate. This is going to be the average number of work-related injuries. It's surveyed of 100 workers over a one-year period. And the reason we have this is it allows companies to compare their incident rate among other companies in their industry. This helps you see, where you at with your incident rate and how you are with the other companies. Are you being safer? Are they being safer?
Okay, so what she said. But basically, TCIR, as I look at it, basically that was their safety, their injuries, or their recordables, or some aspect of that. But basically, they saw that was pretty high. They made an investment in safety. Obviously, from the graph, you can see it was dramatically reduced, in a relatively short period of time. But the blue line, represents, productivity units. The thing that kind of amazed them a little bit and amazes a lot of people when they start really investing in safety is, those units went through the roof. When you go into that boardroom and you're talking, to, your production manager and he says, hey, we don't have the time, as Chelsea said, to pull people off of the safety, off the production to go into a safety committee meeting, find charts like this, and there's plenty of them out there that are going to show that, an investment in safety equals increased productivity. And it makes sense if you really think about it. That's the key. If your employees know what's expected of them, they understand the safety program, they're avoiding accidents, and they're sure of themselves, and they have that confidence, then they're going to produce more. And they produce more production equals more profits. So again, this is a real situation with a real company, a rather large company that, again, made the investment in safety, which the next slide is going to show. Again, they made about maybe a 50% increase in their budgetary, their health and safety funds, and their injuries and illnesses, again, those are dropping. right along with the TCIR rate. And again, at the end result was a more profitable business because again, they've invested in their business, not just, you can invest in things that aren't machinery, that aren't equipment, invest in your employees. And one way to do that is again, a solid safety program. Another success story that we have, and this is one of our clients, it was a roofing company, and we're withholding names to protect the innocent. The owner contracted LSCI. They were, longtime employee that, opposed safety training. Basically, their employees were against their own safety. They felt that they've been doing it a long time. And again, this is one of the, Chelsea mentioned earlier, what some of the common things you get. This is a common thing. Our employees have been doing this for years. They know exactly what they're doing. They're great at what they're doing. We don't got to worry about them getting hurt. So, had a long-time employee that really didn't want the safety training. Ownership recognized that this was important to have within their organization because they were growing. So we got to work. We went in there. We did a training. We made sure they were using the proper harnesses and maybe making sure that they're utilizing, working in a safe manner. All in all, well, between the first set of trainings and the second set of trainings, one of the employees, again, one of these longtime employees, was walking on a roof and fell through a skylight. Luckily, he had a safety harness on, something that was newly instituted within their organization. Saved his life. Needless to say, the next time we came back out, a lot of the employees were all ears to the safety training and very grateful for the work that we were doing with them because again, one life is precious. And again, these guys worked together for years, so it's really important. It was really important to them and really great that, again, people didn't just lose an employee, but they didn't lose a friend. We have another story here of, in 2013, a lumber company was given 9 citations for $27,200 in fines. After the citations were issued, they were scrambling. They contracted Lancaster Safety. We were able to get in there and we got some reductions in those fines. That wasn't their final payout. But the real success story here is that 2 years later, OSHA came back in looking for those costly repeats, which again, repeats are a lot more than the original serious citations. So again, repeats in this case could have been 10 times greater. They could have been looking at $270,000 in fines. But because they had all the paperwork in place, because we had the proper training in place, because we were able to help really redefine and renew their health and safety program, OSHA came in and they had one fine for less than $2,000. That's just such a dramatic turnaround. Going from $27,000 in fines down to $2,000 in fines in 2 years. That's $25,000 difference. Again, there's your return on investment, saving $25,000 on an inspection. And lastly, we have another story here. Again, another roofing client. Obviously, roofing is a high-risk injury. We have a lot of roofing clients. OSHA was watching them. They were a long-term client. OSHA was watching from across the street, saw one of their employees. He wasn't wearing his fall protection. So of course, OSHA, as they always do, they wait and they catch them. They get pictures, and they can, as you can see, I'm not sure if this is the actual picture or not, but again, the employee simply wasn't working with the right fall protection. OSHA gives them some fines. Well, because they've been proactive and because they had the proper training and the proper programs and the proper documentation, and as Chelsea alluded to earlier, the proper disciplinary action, and they could show OSHA step by step that, again, the employee was trained in fall protection. The company had written fall protection programs. They do enforce their safety program and have disciplinary action documented. Bottom line is the citations were dropped. A lot of companies have this misconception that if OSHA comes in, you're getting fined, and you're getting fined big, and there's nothing you can do. This is just one example of a company who made all the right steps in the beginning, and then at the end, it paid off in spades because even though we'd never recommend their employee being up there without fall protection, and even though that's going to take some additional training and really, help change your culture even more, it's great to know that the employer wasn't punished for something that the employee was doing. And again, that case would be considered employee misconduct. So what is our goal? It's to achieve the safest possible working environment. That's really what we're about, and that's what every company should be about. Each of your employees should go home in the same condition. Unfortunately, last year there was about 4,400 fatalities in the workplace. 4,400 fatalities in the workplace. We've had wars with less people dying. So it's really important that, safety is really put to the forefront. Again, it goes back to that moral cause. We don't want our employees getting hurt. But by doing so, you should see increased productivity. You should see increased profitability by, again, reducing those OSHA fines, reducing your workman's comp coverage, and obviously preventing those accidents and all those hidden costs.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up for our webinar today. Thank you everyone for attending our Safety Pays webinar, and thank you, Nick, for teaching us so much about the different ways that safety pays. If any of our clients have questions about today's webinar, feel free to reach out to us. And if you aren't currently working with LSCI to improve the safety of your company, but would like some more information on how to do so, you can call us at 888-403-1007 or visit us at www.lancastersafety.com.